Welcome back to another episode of Christian Natural Health. Today, I am very pleased to have Dr. Emerson Eggerichs with us. Dr. Eggerichs is a internationally known public speaker on the topic of male-female relationships. Based on over 3 decades of counseling, as well as scientific and biblical research, Dr. Eggerichs and his wife, Sarah, developed the Love and Respect Conference, which they present to live audiences around the country. Emerson has authored many books, including the national bestseller, Love and Respect, which is a Platinum and Book of the Year award winner, selling over 2.3 million copies. Dr. Eggerichs is also the founder and president of Love and Respect Ministries, and Sarah serves as vice president. Married since 1973, they live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and have 3 adult children. Welcome, Emerson. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate that introduction. That's kind.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us, Love and Respect, I first read before I got married, and now I am a practicing doctor. I've recommended it to lots and lots of patients who have come to me with some marital issues that might interplay with some of their health stuff. Tell us a little
Mhm.
bit why you wrote the book.
Well, I pastored for nearly 20 years in East Lansing, Michigan, the home of Michigan State University, the Spartans,
Mhm.
and College Town Church. And they
Mhm.
asked me to study the Bible 30 hours a week for the pulpit ministry. And I was greatly honored and privileged to do that from 1980 to 1999. And I came across a verse in Ephesians, which Ephesians 5 in particular, most would consider the greatest treatise in the New Testament on marriage. And I landed on the summary. Paul concludes that section with, and husbands, love your wives, and wives, respect your husbands.
Right.
And of course, I knew there would be no debate about loving your wife.
Sure.
But when we talk about respecting a man,
Uh-huh.
women will sometimes say, well, he hasn't earned it.
Uh-huh.
He doesn't deserve it.
Yeah.
I don't feel it. I'm not going to do what I don't feel because I'm not going to be a hypocrite. The dictionary definition of respect is show respect to your superiors. He's not superior to me. I'm not inferior to him. I'm not going to be treated like a doormat. I'm certainly not going to subject myself to emotional abuse. I'm not going to give him license to do whatever he wants and just come in with pom-poms and just cheer him on so that he can indulge in any carnal activity. And I think your hidden agenda here is to return to patriarchy. But Dr. Emerson,
Wow, you've heard this a few
but
times.
but Dr. Emerson, they say, apart from these things, we're really open to hearing what you have to say about it.
Wow. Okay. So, and I certainly agree. I mean, I'm a woman, so I can understand that perspective a lot more, but I do think there is a definition issue here. Like it seems like most people understand the concept of love. There's an entire chapter in, First Corinthians that talks about here's what love actually looks like. But respect doesn't get defined as well. So how would you respond to the woman who said all of that to you?
Mhm.
What would you say respect actually looks like?
Well, it's a good question. And what's even more intriguing, because I study the Bible, the Apostle Paul, who wrote First Corinthians 13, which is really about spiritual gifts and how we apply love to
Right.
spiritual gifts, he
Yeah.
addressed marriage in First Corinthians 7. And I'm
Mhm.
writing a book called The Win-Win Marriage because there he's talking about doing marriage together, and it's very powerful.
Yeah.
But neither Paul nor Peter
Uh-huh.
command a wife to agape love their husband.
Uh-huh.
In the portions of scripture applied to marriage,
Yeah.
they do not do that. The very one who penned 1 Corinthians 13 never commands a wife to agape love her husband.
Uh-huh.
So that silence there was intriguing to me, and partly is because I think God's put it within the nature of women to nurture. Women love to love at
Hmm.
the level of intimacy. I mean, I say to women, how many times did you say I love you today to family, friends, your mother, your dad? Love you, bye, love you, love you, love you, love you, love you, love you.
Right.
It's just incessant. So the
Sure.
Lord's not going to command a wife to do what he created her to do because
What
he's
comes
not into
naturally.
redundancy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's very telling. But at the same time, women understand the love concept, but why then would Paul and Peter in particular, Peter said you can win a disobedient husband through your respectful behavior, First Peter 3, 1 and 2. And Peter and Paul are no two small apostles. So what's up with this? There must be some secret here. And then it comes down to this issue. Well, okay, I say to women, do you know what respect is? And they'll say, no, we really don't. I said, do you know what disrespect is? Oh yeah, we got that down. We got that down. We know how to do that. I said, well,
Yeah.
in some ways, just lessen that a little bit, and your husband will start grinning if he knows you're doing that on purpose. So,
Yeah.
but in psychology, it's called unconditional positive regard
Huh?
toward the spirit of the person.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Unconditional positive regard. In other words, you are a respectful woman as you confront things that are not loving and are not respectable.
Yeah.
Somehow we have this mindset that if he hasn't earned it and he doesn't deserve it, I can show him contempt, disdain, disgust. But no husband feels fond feelings of love and affection in his heart toward a wife he thinks despises who he is as a human being.
Of
But
course.
what we're up against is no wife intends to be disrespectful. Her
Sure.
aim is to connect. Her aim is to maybe hear him say, I'm sorry, I hurt your feelings, will you forgive me? So her whole mission is to connect, not to put him down. So
Mhm.
there's a huge misunderstanding
Mhm.
between individuals. But for the woman who's saying, well, how do you define it? It's who God calls you to be, independent of who your husband fails to be. That
Mhm.
there is a demeanor of respect that you need to make sure you have because you don't do that naturally, and that's why you're under divine command any more than I'm, whom commanded to love, do it naturally. Sarah is a natural lover. It's just she can't not love. But
Mhm.
when I am too quiet, or if I look at her in a way that may appear angry, or I come across in a way that sounds harsh, all of those things quench her spirit. She has
Yeah.
a special sensitivity. And among guys, that's just kind of how I talk. So I'm not trying to be unloving, but what
Right.
I have to do is step back and ask myself, am I coming across to Sarah in a way that feels unloving to her?
Interesting. So what really struck me when I first read the book and when I try to communicate this to other people too, because I very often hear people say, well, he doesn't deserve, and usually is the woman that says he doesn't deserve the respect.
Mhm.
So why should I act that way? Look at how awful he's being to me, kind of a thing. But it's the vicious cycle and somebody has to break it. That's what I thought was so fascinating as you described
Yes.
it. A well-intentioned man wants to love his wife. A well-intentioned woman wants to respect her husband, but each one needs their bucket to be filled in order to do that. And somebody's got to start the process. And it seems like this is why it's so important to have the three-stranded cord so that if your allegiance is higher to the
Mhm.
Lord, then it becomes a whole lot easier to say, I don't care if I feel it, I'm going to do it because I love him. Right? Is that,
No,
yeah.
that's exactly right. And at the end of the day, Paul in Ephesians 5, as well as in Colossians, says we do what we do as to the Lord. We
Right.
serve Christ. We don't serve
Yeah.
human beings. And so one of the things in this chapter is chapter 2 of the light bulb moments. I talk about seeing Jesus beyond the shoulder of your spouse.
Mhm.
That every wife, every husband, when we get into these heated fellowship moments, I've got to remind myself.
That's so euphemistic.
Yeah, exactly. That Christ is standing beyond the shoulder of Sarah, and he's saying, Emerson, unto me. No, I see that she's holding up your love and respect book. No, I see it's page 60 where you're failing to do. No, I see your finger in your face. No, Emerson, unto me, unto
Right.
me. And I
Yeah.
think every Christ follower realizes that's exactly what Paul is teaching, as well as Jesus is. You've done the least of these, you've done it unto me. And that's where Paul meditated and landed. So at the end of the day, this is about who God calls me to be in relationship to this other person. And logic has to be applied here. If we conclude, and your daughter-in-law is going to do this, if you have sons, I always say to women, this is when the light bulb comes on for many mothers
Yeah.
and women, it, what is your son going to do in response to this sweet daughter-in-law who says he hasn't earned my respect, he doesn't deserve my respect, so I'm going to show him disgust, I'm going to despise him, I'm going to show him contempt, and I'm going to motivate him to love me by being negative.
Right. It's obviously not going to work. Right.
You cannot use unholy means to
Sure.
achieve worthy ends. And so
Right.
again, the aim is to communicate a message to the husband. I'm hurting, and you should be able to decode this.
Yeah.
And so the expectation is that she's not trying to throw him under the bus. She's trying to actually connect. She's not even really extending a complaint. She's actually expressing a compliment that I have a need that only you can meet. And I expect you to decode this.
Sure. Yeah. Interesting. So, so much of this also feels like, and again, with the perspective of focusing on the Lord first, but when Jesus is on the Sermon on the Mount, he's describing the concept of you lose your life in order to find it. You seek first the kingdom, and then all these things will be added to you. If you seek directly the thing that you want, it will elude you. But if you seek Him first, then everything else begins to fall into place in order to break the cycle, essentially, in this particular case, assuming that you have a well-meaning, well-intentioned spouse, because they still have their own free will, of course.
Yes.
So,
Well, and that's one of the questions I asked based on
yeah,
1 Corinthians 7, verse 33
right.
and 34, where
Yeah.
Paul said, the husband, and this is intriguing, Paul penned Romans, the great treatise on the total depravity of the human heart. The
Mhm.
one who penned that treatise says to husbands and wives at Corinth, in verse 33 and 34, the husband is concerned about how to please his wife,
Yeah.
and the wife is concerned about how to please her husband.
Right.
Why doesn't he say, the reason you've got so many problems is you're married to a sinful, selfish individual and you need to tell them so?
Yeah,
He doesn't do
exactly.
that.
Right.
So one of the chapters is, are we going to live by the holy word or Hollywood?
Sure.
And all of us have to come to a point where we make a decision. Am I going to trust what Scripture is teaching here? And
Mhm.
I ask people, and I've asked this over the last, 2.5 decades, and it's been very intriguing. And people have really responded, so it's made a believer out of me. But I started asking people, does your spouse have basic goodwill? And at first, I didn't know how people would respond because they had such negative feelings toward their spouse.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
they said, yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And so, isn't it interesting that we don't like our spouse and we really are coming at them in very negative ways? And in some ways, we are causing them to feel like they're the worst person on the planet, when the fact is, we really do see them as having basic goodwill. They're
Uh-huh.
just not fulfilling some of our expectations, and we
Sure.
feel that they really aren't as caring as they could be, that
Uh-huh.
we don't matter to them as much as we want to. But when we unpack it, no. And that's why I think, again, you were making reference to that. We're not talking about a violent individual. We're not talking about being in harm's way. We're
Right.
talking about married to a person who has basic goodwill, and they
Right.
don't get up early in the morning to storyboard ways to mistreat you.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. So you wrote in Love and Respect, you said the way to fully love a husband is to respect him in ways that are meaningful to him. So can you unpack this? I assume this also, you've done lots of counseling. I'm assuming this kind of goes back to the five love language concept. Is it sort of like that or not really?
Well, certainly, yeah. I mean, we would all say that we need sometimes to start with our spouse's need. In other words,
Yeah.
sometimes, we'll put it this way, I try to motivate my spouse to meet my deepest need by depriving them of their deepest need.
Right. Yeah, of course.
And so it always comes down to who moves first. And of course, we always want our spouse to move first. In fact, when they have, we've been so happy and we see that what they did wasn't that difficult to do. So why
Sure.
can't they keep doing that? So I think the
Right.
so there is this, natural conclusion that this isn't rocket science. You should be able to keep doing this. So it must mean that I don't matter to you because I keep asking you to do this. And so then we begin to put it on them to bring about the change in the relationship because we know when they do certain things, we're happy. And so why can't they just keep doing that? But I think all of us have to step back and
Mhm.
say, okay, there's a choice. Either I can try to motivate them to meet my needs, and
Mhm.
the best way to do that sometimes is deprive them of theirs.
Mhm.
That doesn't work too well.
Yeah,
That goes over
exactly.
like a Led Zeppelin.
Uh-huh.
Or to your point, and it applies both ways. The best way to love a husband is by meeting his need to feel respected for who he is, apart from his performance. In the same way, the best way to respect a wife, and women need RESPECT, is to meet her deepest need for love. And
Mhm.
it begs the question then, well, what does that look like? And of course, now coming back around to your question, that's where I unpack 6 chapters on how you spell respect to a man.
Mhm.
And but it begins oftentimes just as simple as this, and this isn't complex to do. You can do it right now, immediately today, because no doubt there's going to be that heated fellowship with your husband tonight. If your audience, the women in the audience, listen to this, and you start to really maybe come at him, but say it this way: Hey, I'm very upset right now. I want to say something to you, but you're an honorable man. I don't want to dishonor you. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I need something that only you can give to me right now. I need your strength. How do I say this in a way that you don't think I'm attacking you?
Oh, see, and to say something like that, though, requires a lot of courage. Like there's a lot of vulnerability in coming out and saying, this is what I need. And I think a lot of times, so there was something else that you wrote. I'm going to quote you again. So that women are only acting critical, contentious, and disrespectful because they are crying out for love. So, but what you're saying is just say it in those exact words. Say what it is that you want. And then they're much more likely to move toward you because they're not going to perceive it as an attack, but that's scary. So how do you get women over that hump of
Right.
go past the defense?
Yeah. Yeah. And I say the same thing to men. I mean, I say to men in our conference, you are willing to die for this woman. I know you would, but you're not willing to live with her.
Yeah,
You have more courage to die for her.
right.
And everybody knows that's true. The men know, and among men, just ladies need to trust me. Among men, yeah, but we're afraid of her.
Yeah.
So we'll die for her. We have more courage to do that than to be around the
Mhm.
criticism, the contempt, the disrespect, the negativity, the lack of friendliness. And so he withdraws. 85% of those who withdraw in the Stonewall during marital conflict, according to the University of Washington, studying 2,000 couples, 20 years, is the male. And the reason for that we can unpack maybe a little bit later. But to the point about the wife as well, yes, I say to you ladies, many of you women are godly Christ followers who would die for Jesus Christ. So
Mhm.
there's an incredible faith, and you would not deny Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
But when it comes to romance, when it comes to intimacy, you kind of kick back into your adolescent childhood girl thing, the little girl. And so you're so afraid that if you actually spoke what we just gave the script to speak,
Mhm.
that if I do that and he doesn't respond positively, now what do I do?
Mhm.
What you do
Right.
is you stay on message.
Yeah.
What you do is you stay on message. I mean, what would it be like if a man said, "Look, you know my old man, you know the issues I'm sitting on because of him, you know my anger issues. How do I say this more lovingly? You know, every time I get upset, I say something unloving to you, and I don't want to do that because you know I'd die for you if you don't kill me first. But how do I do this?" Okay, every wife I've met would start smiling.
Yeah, of course.
You see? And so are you gonna, so should a man be afraid of saying that to a woman?
Right, of course not. Right.
And so women need to trust me. Men live by an honor code. Many women live by a love code. It's just about love. And I'm making, generalized statements that can be criticized, and I would be the first one to do that. But given you take this scenario, if he lives by an honor code, and this is huge in a man. Pat Riley, the president of Miami Heat, had me come down twice to spend several hours with him alone, as well as with Coach Spo, to talk about issues of honor and how you motivate men. And men are motivated by honor. And when you treat a man honorably and justly, he'll die for you. If
Mhm.
you dishonor him and treat him unfairly, there'll be mutiny. He'll jump ship or he'll throw you over ship. This is huge to us. That's why men cried during The Gladiator. That's why
Yeah.
they cried during Saving Private Ryan. That's why Braveheart. Why? Because it's all about strength and honor.
Yeah.
Now, that isn't egotistical. That's rooted in who we are. Are we honorable enough to give our very lives?
Mhm.
See? Okay, so now if you say to him, "How do I do this respectful thing? I don't want to diss you. I don't want to dishonor. You're an honorable man. I believe God's call is on your life. But right now, I'm very upset with you. I'm mad, but I don't want to step on your air hose because you're a good man. You're good-willed. But I'm mad right now. Help me."
Yeah.
Okay? Now, for you to talk this way, he's going to, first of all, if you come out of the non-Christian in the world, he's going to say, "Are you drunk?"
Right, yeah.
Because this is
Nobody
too good
talks
to be
like that.
true. This
Nobody
is too
talks
good
like
to
that.
be true. Yeah,
Right.
so I just say to every godly woman out there, yeah, it's going to take courage. And in the initial stages, he may not see. Women are in the present, always in the present. That's why they pay attention to formula. 6 ways to do this. For the women
Mhm.
are even saying, "I'll test out your theory, Emerson." This isn't theory. This is theology. This is from the heart of God the Father. And there's no, footnote in the parchment that says Sally is an exception to Ephesians 5:33.
Mhm.
So, but what you have to trust is if you obey Jesus Christ, trust Christ, see Christ beyond the shoulder of your spouse, and you stay on message that way.
Yeah.
As I say, if your spouse doesn't respond, you got to be married to one bad dude or one bad dudess.
Yeah, seriously. And so much of this also goes back to you have to be rooted and grounded in Christ. That has to be your identity so that you're not so vulnerable to what somebody else says. You have to have that. Otherwise, you don't have the courage to step out. It's too scary. But if you already know that you're secure and you're loved elsewhere, then you can have the courage to actually open up and be vulnerable in that way. And
Well,
that's
and that's a great point. I start the whole light bulb
yeah,
moments book with
yeah.
our value, which it must be God driven, not spouse, God given, not spouse driven. God given, not spouse driven.
Right. You referenced the light bulb book. Can you give our listeners a brief overview of what that is since we talked about it before we were on air,
Right,
but
right.
yeah.
But hundreds and hundreds of people have written me about the light bulb moment they had. And one of
Mhm.
the things I share, sometimes we don't need more effort, we need more light. Just like in the research at the University of Washington, they found 85% of those men withdrawing and stonewalling in these conflicted moments.
Yeah.
But they had a linguist there, they had videotape going on, they were measuring the heartbeats per minute, so they were
Mhm.
monitored medically, they had physicians there. And they noted that during these heated moments, the wife sometimes looked like she was out of control, but
Mhm.
her heartbeats were normal.
Hmm.
He looked very stoic, but his
Yeah.
heartbeats were getting at that moment to 99 beats per minute.
Mhm.
He's in warrior mode.
Mhm.
And then Gottman talks about men become flooded in particular. They're flooded. So you're not going to have a rational discussion
Right.
once he's in this fight or flight thing. So he doesn't want to fight. And
Hmm.
that's why he'll even say you're picking a fight when you're not picking a fight.
Right.
But
Yeah.
there is this moment where he has to disengage and de-escalate
Right.
physiologically. He's not conscious with words that I'm using,
Yeah.
but he knows he has to withdraw to protect the relationship.
Uh-huh.
Okay. But the women in these 2,000 couples were asked, when your husband withdraws and stonewalls like that, what do you feel? The response, Lauren, was so common. They made it a descriptor, active hostility. That's what they all said. It feels like he hates me, he doesn't love me. Active hostility. So they put that as the descriptor, active hostility when he
Yeah.
withdraws and stonewalls. Now,
Right.
all my research, and they knew this as well, when men are in this situation, if I had a best buddy and we got into a heated moment and we were just really mad at each other, we're lethal. So at a certain point, we say, drop it, forget it, and we just exit
Yeah.
because the relationship is more important than the stupid issue we're talking about. That's
Right.
how we as men do it. Okay. So
Hmm.
then the man does this. Why? Because it's an act of honor.
Hmm. Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is honorable in our world,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Harry doesn't say, you hurt my feelings, Emerson. We need to talk.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
That doesn't go on. Okay.
right.
So
Yeah.
now it begs this. Here's the question I'm leading up to.
Uh-huh.
Is is this moment of withdrawal and stonewalling an act of hostility or is it an act of honor?
Right. So, from my world, autonomic nervous system, there's two sides to it. There's the sympathetic, parasympathetic. The sympathetic is fight, flight, freeze. You just described sympathetic freeze mode, where if you can't fight and you can't flee, the only thing left is you freeze. And a lot of people who are in a situation of trauma, whether it's, they're exposed to lots of chemical exposure or they went through emotional trauma or something along those lines, if that's all they can do, they withdraw from the world. It's exactly what you just described. So, but it's very interesting that like, I'm assuming if the woman's heart rate is normal, which is weird if she's angry, I would have thought that she'd be in fight mode. But
Yeah.
if her heart rate is normal, she's parasympathetic. She's trying to actually address the problem, but they're missing each other. There's that disconnect. It's really fascinating.
Hugely so. And no, that's fascinating. And
Yeah.
and that's exactly right. So if a husband at that moment said, well, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? And he's very humble, she'll immediately go, oh, you're so sweet. Well, I was really bad. I was worse than you. I was
Right.
horrible. I was like a witch on a broom. And she'll immediately
Sure.
meet him halfway and go beyond that. And she'll move into self-deprecation and she will meet his apology with an apology. And it happens instantaneously. That's why she's not out of control. In fact,
Mhm.
oftentimes that's her aim. She knows exactly what
What
she's
she's
trying to do
after.
here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But now back to the man and
Mhm.
back to the woman. When we ask that question, act of hostility or an act of honor, the answer is yes. It
Interesting.
just depends on whether you're a woman or a man or you're pink and blue. And
Right.
so here's where I say we don't need more effort because we are going through this dynamic all the time in marriages. But
Yeah.
once we get a little light, then at least you can say, I know you're an honorable man, and I know you've gone quiet because you don't want to escalate this, and I salute you for that. But right now I have a need, and you're the only one that can meet it. So how can we find win-win here?
Wow. Yeah, that's very powerful. It certainly would require a lot of self-control in the moment for a woman to be
That's
able to
right.
say it
Well,
that way.
I mean, and so
Sure.
here's the point. So
Yeah.
if we're not self-regulated,
Right. Yeah.
so they're the problem then, not me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No,
I mean,
absolutely.
how is it that we give ourselves license to lose control and confront him for the fact that he got angry, let's say?
Yeah.
So this is a bald-headed man selling hair restoration oil.
Uh-huh.
The challenge is there. I mean, it really is. And so the same research, the
Yeah.
researchers also found in these heated moments, women criticize and complain, criticize and complain, criticize, complain. And they knew that wasn't politically correct. They
Mhm.
knew that was not going to, be acceptable, but the linguists are saying that's what it is. So they came out and said women criticize and complain in
Mhm.
these moments. This is far more. And so how do you interpret that? Well, all the research on sociological, scale shows women are the caregivers. I
Mhm.
mean, I say to men, if you have a stroke and you're in a wheelchair, you're going to have 100 prayer teams of women across this country praying for you, and they're
Oh,
going to be burdened for you.
absolutely.
It's just you just need to understand they can't not care.
Mhm.
And so when she criticizes, complain, I ask men, what do you feel? Well, she's just using this as another opportunity to send a message for me that she has nothing but disrespect for me and that she has contempt for me. That's the whole issue.
Yeah.
So I say, well, now let's ask this question. Is it an act of contempt, this complaint and criticism, or is it an act of care?
She's trying to express what she hopes for.
Correct. And
Hmm.
so if it's a male, though, no one talks to him this way.
Right, sure. Yeah,
So how
absolutely.
is he to filter this negativity? The University of Washington talked about the gestures of contempt. The
Yeah.
woman's eyes turn dark, the face turns sour, hand on the hips, a scolding finger comes out, the
Hmm.
sigh, the rolling head. And when estrogen kicks in, the word choice of contempt is incredible.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
how is he to interpret that? So what we have to do is we don't need more effort because the whatever we're doing isn't working when the criticism complaint. So
Sure.
part of what we do at our conference, if you have a little light, if you can believe that your spouse has goodwill, she really does care, and she's really not trying to be contemptuous, and he
Mhm.
really is an honorable man, and he's not trying to be hostile, are
Mhm.
we willing to reframe that?
Yeah.
Are you willing to allow 1 Corinthians 7:33 and 34
Hmm.
to trump your feelings,
Right.
that your spouse is concerned about how to please you, even though they fail to do that in ways that are as meaningful to you as you would hope. I get that, but
Right.
that's different than coming at them with hostility and contempt on an ongoing basis to motivate them to be loving and
Yeah.
respect.
Yeah. So you also wrote in the Love and Respect book, something in a man longs for his wife to look up to him as he fulfills this role, his role as a man. And what you're describing here too, it also sounds like essentially we're called to have faith in our spouse and in the Lord, but in our spouse that they are better than what we're seeing right this second. It reminds me a little bit of the story of Gideon, where before Gideon's done anything, God calls him a mighty man of valor. And it's as if it says, I think Paul wrote in Romans that God calls things that are not as though they were. And it's like we're called to do the same thing for our spouse, to interact with them as God sees them, as we know they can be, and not necessarily as we're seeing them in this moment. And that encourages them to step into that role.
It's huge. And I say, do you see your spouse as a Judas or as a Peter? They both denied Jesus.
Oh, that's a really good point. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a metaphor that I use. It's based on what we know biblically, but it's an important point
Uh-huh.
because if your spouse is a Peter, good heart, loves the Lord, but has weak moments and shortcomings and
Right.
fails, he failed Jesus. But that's different than being a betrayer.
Yeah.
Now, if there's betrayal going on, that's and adultery is going on, Jesus said that's biblical grounds for divorce.
Mhm.
But that's usually not the problem. Problem is my spouse isn't treating me in ways that are as meaningful to me and as energizing to me as I want. And so I'm upset with them. I'm mad at them.
Mhm.
And so my question though is, are you really coming at them as though they're a Judas when they're a Peter? And if you're doing so, is Jesus Christ himself seeing your spouse as a Judas or as a Peter? And
Mhm.
if the Lord sees him as a Peter, who's failing indeed,
Mhm.
but you're treating them as a Judas, I like to ask this question as a pastor, and it's a question of exhortation. Who do you think you are? God?
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Hmm. So, what have I not asked you that you want to make sure that you leave with our audience?
Well, I do want to swing back to what you're saying. I think believing in a person, we looked at the less, than the Judas figure that Peter was. But I think, as you point out, do we really believe that this woman is a loving individual who's motivated purely? I say to men, your wife is motivated by virtue. I mean, she's got to really be one wicked person for her
Right.
not to, her whole day is, she just cares. Now, the way in which she delivers that, or when she cares about you, and that's partly why she's criticizing because she's trying to help you, help her suitable. Will we believe that she's a loving human being? And will we believe that our husband wants to be an honorable man?
Hmm.
When
Hmm.
I spoke to Pat Riley and Coach Spo, I said, do you want honors? Do you want to be honored or do you want to be honorable? In a nanosecond, both of them said, we want to be honorable.
Interesting. Yeah.
And
That's
do we believe that about our husband?
right.
But some women have said if he doesn't pick up the socks on a regular basis, if I'm mad at him on that particular area, I'm mad at him in every area.
Right. And it just bleeds over. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. So, well, thank you so much. This has been great. Where can people go to learn more about you, your books, and your conferences?
Loveandrespect.com, LOVEANDRESPECT.com.
All right. Sounds good. Well, I will link to that in the show notes. And thank you so much, Emerson. This has been terrific. I really appreciate your time.
And I apologize for freezing up, but it's one of
Yeah.
the three, right?
Yeah.
Fight, fight, or freeze.
There
Well,
we
look
go.
what
This is
happened. Look
exhibit
what
A.
happened.
Exactly. All right.
All right.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.